What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back in with a new video, and today, it is time that we talk about the 2024 Republican presidential primary, as Governor Ron DeSantis and his campaign is planning a complete and total reboot. That is right, everybody. For the first time this cycle, I would argue Team DeSantis finally made a smart move. They're going to be trying to reboot the entire campaign after, let's be real, 2 months of complete and total embarrassment for the governor of the great state of Florida. And I actually think this is a really smart move by Team DeSantis because it hasn't worked. Their current strategy has not worked at all. In fact, it's hurt DeSantis more than has helped. So I think it's a little bit late for this, but at least Team DeSantis is finally looking towards something different. Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Guys, just for $1 a month, you could join Real American. This is the best way to support the daily content we all know and love, and also help support the independent content that comes with, well, being an independent content creator. So I hope and recommend you join the channel today. Alright, everybody. So, it's been, I would say, 2 months too late to do this, but I'm glad that Ron DeSantis is planning a campaign reboot as he struggles to close the gap with Trump. Now, outside of the people that are on Twitter that still believe that there's mystical data that have DeSantis secretly surging, Team DeSantis itself finally realized that, okay, we're not actually secretly up, we are down by 20, 30 points in most instances. So, they gotta reboot it. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign is planning a reboot, top campaign officials said, with a significant shift on messaging, events, and media strategy. Wow. So basically the entire campaign, everything that's been wrong with this mess of a campaign has been that. Expect fewer big speeches and more handshaking in diners and churches. I actually think this is a good idea. I really do think that DeSantis' problem is he's trying to out-Trump Trump. When it comes to, doing these mega rallies, it ain't drawing the same crowd and they're not as energetic. So, yeah, DeSantis should be going to these diners, go to churches, go to these local events that's not getting the most media coverage, but just talk with voters. And don't pretend to be somebody you're not. This has always been a huge thing that I've had issues with DeSantis. He's pretending to be this, blue-collar guy that grew up in the Rust Belt, which he never did, mind you. That's the problem with DeSantis. He's not genuine about really anything. His messaging, his campaign, really nothing. Just don't pretend that you're from Iowa. That's not going to win you anybody over. Why do you think Trump, somebody from New York, did so great in Ohio and Iowa? Because, put it simply, people know he's legitimate. There will be more of a national focus than constant Florida references, and the mainstream media may start to get more access. In short, DeSantis will be running as an insurgent candidate rather than as an incumbent governor. Thank you. As somebody that supports Trump, I'm glad that they're finally gonna stop this crap of, well, in Florida 3 years ago, we were able to rebuild a bridge. It's like, nobody cares what you did as governor of Florida. Yes, use that as why you are a good governor. That's one thing. But why does that matter to being the president? I was a good governor. Okay, but how does that make you a good president? I was a good governor. That doesn't help you. Ron DeSantis has never been the favorite or the darling of the establishment, and he has won because of it every time. No one in this race has been under fire more and won than Governor DeSantis. He's ready to prove them wrong again. Buckle up. DeSantis campaign manager Janera Peck said in a statement to NBC News. He's currently getting the most backing from the establishment. Like, I don't think they're the biggest fan of him. They're just using him to prevent Trump from getting the nomination. But still, it's like, okay, sure, you're going to be the insurgent now? Downright low is how a source who was present when the staffers were fired described morale these days. The entire campaign is on the brink. The person said, I've never seen anything like it. And this is why they're doing a sudden reboot. Because from everything we're hearing, and I even heard this a couple days ago, that the DeSantis campaign it's not pretty. It is not pretty at all behind the scenes. I mean, people are getting fired left and right. I mean, if the campaign wasn't running out of money, why would they have to fire large chunks of their campaign? Why? Because they are running out of money, and they overestimated, or I should say underestimated, how popular Trump still is in the GOP, and overestimated how being the governor of Florida automatically makes you a contender. The reboot is notable for a candidate who is perhaps the most widely expected GOP entrant in the 2024 race. While DeSantis has maintained his second-ranking place in the polls, he has been unable to close the gap with the frontrunner, former President Trump. And even a couple polls today show Ramaswamy is actually in a couple of polls within the margin of error now. But the hurdles remain significant, and it's unclear whether it's too late to reverse early stumbles. While some candidates have successfully shifted after tough starts, the presidential campaign trail is littered with candidates who ultimately failed to regain momentum. And this is the big thing. Yes, DeSantis in the past, he surged at the last second in several elections. But this is a presidential election. There's 50 states that you have to campaign in. Not just Florida. 50 states where it's like they're all completely different dynamics. It's not like one singular state you could throw everything at. You have to campaign everywhere. And he's losing momentum in every single state. The DeSantis campaign finance report flashed some bright warning signs. Although he raised more than $20 million from mid-May to the end of June, more than any other Republican candidate, more than 2/3 of that money came from donors who gave the legal limit and can't donate again. He also spent about 40% of what he raised with 92 people on the payroll. So if you're wondering what that means, essentially half the money, or just under half, is already gone. Immediately gone, $10 million paid to payroll people. But not only that, a lot of this money came from big donors, and they financially, legally, cannot give any more money, I think, till next year, or next quarter at least. So it's like, well, there goes a lot of your money right away. So this is why this was a warning sign. Yes, he raised the most money, but he already spent half of that, and a lot of the money he ain't getting again. Other candidates include Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, Vivek Ramaswamy, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and even Trump, all had higher spending rates than DeSantis, but with less cash in the bank, $12.2 million to Trump's $22.5 million, and the high number of maxed out donors, solvency becomes a real question. And that's the big thing. Unlike the other candidates, DeSantis has virtually no grassroots support, financially speaking. Trump, he does, arguably the biggest. And that's why it's not a good sign when you start reading into the numbers for DeSantis. The full extent of the campaign's dire financial picture became clear to the broader team only after the June 30 end-of-quarter reporting deadline, said two sources familiar with the situation, who asked to remain anonymous because they weren't authorized to share information on behalf of the campaign. The campaign postponed paying some of its outstanding bills until after the end of June, in part so its second quarter financial report would show more money in the bank, the sources said. It's not an uncommon practice for campaigns running up against big reporting deadlines, but it can obscure larger issues. I mean, I'm glad that DeSantis is making this huge pivot, but it's like, you can't just run a campaign on, hoping to God that Trump drops out and you have just enough money. Top DeSantis aides acknowledge that the money situation has to be addressed. They plan to do it in part by cutting costs for his events. DeSantis won't travel less, but his campaign appearances will begin to be leaner and more intimate. This week's stop in Tega, South Carolina, served as a starting point. He held a town hall-style event with a noticeably pared-down security present. According to figures provided by the campaign, the event cost $940, but brought in $1,600 in organic donations for the attendees. So again, that's actually a really smart thing. And I think more candidates have to do that, or should at least. Get these smaller, rural town hall events. Not this, nationalized event. Just do these local events where, maybe streamed, but make it local and don't make a big deal about it. Just say, hey, we're having an event here, town hall, and raise some money there. I think that's actually a good idea for Team DeSantis because this is honestly one of the best ways they can raise money at this point, which is kind of just sad, but you get the point. Going forward, expect fewer podiums and stages and more stops at pizza ranches, churches, and VFW halls where DeSantis can speak directly to voters with no big platforms or barricades blocking close contact. All DeSantis needs to drive news and win this primary is a mic and a crowd, Peck said. The campaign will also rely more heavily on a special guest invitations from outside organizations to cut down on its own event cost, particularly ones ran by its bigger-pocketed counterparts at the pro-DeSantis super PAC Never Back Down. Again, it's just a complete coincidence that a super PAC that's totally out of the campaign, which legally they're not allowed to be involved in the campaign, they're suddenly fronting the cost for DeSantis to show up. I'm sure that's a complete coincidence. But overall, yeah. So big issue number 2 was really the amount of money that his campaign was just blowing on crap. DeSantis will also tweak his message. Until now, much of his pitch to voters has been centered on his accomplishments in Florida, but he will soon switch to a more national outlook, top campaign officials said. Thank you! If I ever have to hear you talk about Florida for more than 5 seconds again, I'm going to pull hair on my head. I mean, it's been constant stuff about Florida. It's like, yes, I'm fine with once or twice mentioning Florida. But you're a great governor and stuff. But I don't want to hear the entire speech about what I did in Florida. People want to know, how does that translate to being a president? The candidate already known for being a culture warrior will lean into an us against the world message in an effort to emerge as the insurgent fighter. The campaign intends to wear the negative headlines as a badge of honor. That's a bit questionable, but okay. Governor DeSantis' public service has been defined by being the underdog. Every time he's been underestimated, written off, or dismissed, he has proven his enemies wrong. From winning a stunning upset in his first congressional race, to beating Tallahassee insider Adam Putnam in 2018, to bucking the entrenched bureaucracy on COVID, Peck said. They finally bring up Adam Putnam. Just go look up what actually happened there. There was a certain orange man that backed DeSantis. They ignore that part. At the same time, the campaign is opening up to what it has long called corporate media, after months of having largely limited his engagement with reporters to conservative outlets. DeSantis took questions from NBC News about immigration in June, and he sat down with CNN this week. Again, why was this always the idea of just ignore the national media? Like I said, I want you to do local events, don't have a nationalized, televised, CNN town hall every second. But it's like, why are you avoiding national media? I understand that, this is corporate media we're talking about, but still, it's like, as of now, there's still some of the bigger outlets out there. You can't just ignore them and, bank on these smaller outlets. I would say focus more on the smaller outlets, but don't just make 100% ignoring the bigger media companies. The campaign said more interviews with national media will be coming, along with more media gaggles and greater media access overall to the candidate while he's on the trail. They're dubbing it DeSantis' everywhere approach, and they're bringing on a new hire and solidifying the communications team to help execute it. Cody Hall is joining the campaign as a senior communications advisor. He'll remain a top political advisor to Governor Brian Kemp, having also served as communications director after he worked on his 2018 campaign for governor. Campaign spokesperson Andrew Romeo is stepping into the communications director role, and Brian Griffin will continue as press secretary. But is he just going to copy Perry Johnson with this? Because Perry Johnson has his own Newsmax show. So that's what it seems like. I understand you're trying to get him more relatable to people, but it's like, you're just flat out copying what Johnson did a couple months ago, or is still doing right now. And there's a lot of good stuff here. Don't get me wrong, but like this said, the layoffs shook the campaign. The source in the room that day said a lawyer and a senior staff member, not Peck, went around the office and dryly notified employees they were being let go, thanking them for their service and telling them they needed to leave by 2 p.m. that day. The fired staffers were told someone would follow up with them in the coming days. So, morale is already down, and I just think this is kind of a last gasp attempt of trying to gain some kind of momentum. I mean, theoretically, it should only go up from here. But I really do think the layoffs that just happened with Team DeSantis, it may be too late. This may be too late to finally switch gears into a competent campaign. But we just got to see what happens with DeSantis. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell. Follow the social media accounts in the description down below. And of course, join the channel today. Thank you so much. Godspeed to all of you.